At least 12 people were killed and more than 40 were injured in Palestine as a result of a new Israeli bombing of tents housing the city of Han Yunis south of the Gaza Strip. Ecuadorian former Vice President Jorge Glas, who faces charges related to the alleged embezzlement of funds, was transferred from the maximum security prison known as La Roca to Quito to submit at a new hearing. And the first meeting of agriculture and fisheries ministers of ALBA TCP was held in Venezuela with the objective of achieving food sovereignty through regional cooperation. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Palestine, at least 12 people were killed and more than 40 were injured as a result of an Israeli bombing of tents housing displaced persons in the city of Han Yunis, south of the Gaza Strip. On March 18th, the Israeli army resumed its attacks on the Gaza Strip as part of a new offensive called Gideon's Chariots. The same month, Israel also cut out electricity to the desalination plant in Gaza and blocked trucks carrying humanitarian aid from entering the enclave. Added to this is the famine facing the Palestinian people as a result of the blockade on the entry of humanitarian aid, aggravating the critical situation of Gazans. According to a report from the Gaza Ministry of Health, since the start of the Israeli offensive on October 7, 2023, the total number of fatalities in Gaza has exceeded 54,600. And in Palestine, at least 5 people were killed this morning near a Gaza Humanitarian Foundation aid distribution point in the southern strip. Well, since the GHF began operating in late May, Israel has regularly targeted hungry people seeking aid, causing hundreds of casualties. The Gaza government press office has published a breakdown of the number of casualties near the distribution point since the GHF opened its doors. On May 27th, 3 people were killed and 46 injured. On May 28th, 10 people were killed and 62 injured. And on June 1st, 35 people were killed and 200 injured in Rafah. On the same day, 1 person was killed and 32 others were injured at the Gaza Valley Bridge. On June 2nd, 26 people were killed and 92 injured. On June 3rd, 27 people were killed and 90 injured. And on June 6th, 8 people were killed and 61 injured. The number of people killed near aid distribution centers stands at 157 and 583 injured so far. And on Friday, Volker Turk, United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, said he was deeply disturbed by the U.S. government's decision to impose sanctions against the judges of the International Criminal Court. He asked Washington to withdraw these measures against the judges from Benin, Peru, Slovenia, and Uganda, who have ruled on the cases of Afghanistan and Palestine. The State Department will prevent these judges from entering U.S. territory and will block any property or other interests they have in the territory. They questioned the arrest warrant issued against the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, responsible for the death of more than 50,000 Palestinians, of whom nearly 18,000 are children. And in Sudan, authorities report more than 1,000 daily cases of a rapidly spreading cholera outbreak in Khartoum of this war-torn country. Let's see.
The outbreak is centered around the capital Khartoum and has spread as many Sudanese who had fled the country's war return home.
These days, the cholera situation is really bad, especially in Khartoum, which became at the moment the epicenter of the outbreak. So we had a wave of cholera that really increased in a few days, exploded in hundreds of cases, even getting above 1,000 cases a day in Khartoum.
Most cases have been reported in Khartoum and its twin city of Durman, but cholera was also detected in the provinces of North Kordofan, Sennar, Gezira, White Nile, and Nile River, health officials said.
obviously regarding the consequences of the conflict on the water system, on the health system, on the hygiene of the people. A lot of people got displaced many times, so they didn't have a shelter or even a house. So they were, living in overcrowded the shelter. So the promiscuity, the lack of water, the lack of hygiene, and the lack of access to healthcare, all that contributed to really increase the cholera and complicate to put the disease under control, the outbreak under control.
Health workers fear the outbreak could spread quickly since many people are packed into displacement centers, making it difficult to isolate those infected.
And in the United States, the government's aggressive campaign against migrants sparked a strong protest this Friday in Los Angeles, where the Federal Bureau of Investigation had to intervene. The escalation against migrant workers ordered by the Department of Homeland Security led officers to raid several commercial establishments in downtown and south of the city. There, according to spokeswoman of the Immigration Control Department, Jasmine Pitts, some 44 workers were arrested. The situation got complicated when witnesses and owners of commercial establishments locked up several immigration agents, which led to the intervention of the feds. In this context, the feds, with tear gas and arrests, attenuated the protest, one of many that occur daily in the country, silenced by most of the media. And in the United States, hundreds of people protested at a rally in Washington, D.C. against Trump's cuts to the Department of Veterans Affairs that provide health care and other services to millions of U.S. military veterans.
And I get benefits and medical treatment, and I can't get in and get appointments anymore for my medical treatment. The system has been broken, not just the VA, but much of the federal government has been intentionally broken, and it's going to take a while for the damage to be recognized, and it's even going to take generations to recover from it.
You know, they had this campaign of eliminating Black history, and taking out people who were pioneers. First of all, Black history is part of American history. It always has been. How do you erase that? How do you sweep that under the rug? No, I don't like it. It's crazy. I mean, because that's a direct attack on me. Matter of fact, people of color, period. The indigenous people of this country, it's an attack upon them too. I mean, please, to a man who was a coward. Was a coward.
In the United States, a federal appeals court decided not to allow the implementation of Florida's anti-immigrant law, which represents one of the most severe policies against undocumented migrants in the state. The American Civil Liberties Union reported that the U.S. 11th Circuit Court of Appeals unanimously rejected the request to suspend a previous ruling that had blocked the law since last month. This initial ruling considers that SB 4C could be unconstitutional, halting its implementation while the legal process moves forward. The law, which allows for the arrest and imprisonment of immigrants without prior inspection, has been described by human rights advocates as cruel and in violation of basic constitutional rights. And U.S. President Donald Trump's administration on Friday filed an appeal with the U.S. Supreme Court to dismantle the Department of Education. This step is in response to an executive order signed in March 2025, which seeks to shut down the federal entity, transferring its authorities to the states. According to the White House, the goal is allegedly to reduce public spending and return educational control to the local level, although legal experts point out that a total shutdown requires congressional approval. The dismantling of the Department of Education threatens several federal programs, some of which fund schools with high populations of students in poverty or support 7.5 million students with special needs. The move could weaken racial and gender equity policies, which would undermine diversity and inclusion initiatives with education systems. Like this, we have our first break coming up. Remember to join us on TikTok at teleSUR English. And we'll be right back. On Saturday, Russia denounced Ukraine's non-compliance with the agreements reached at the second round of talks in Istanbul, Turkey. The head of the Russian delegation, Vladimir Medinsky, detailed that Kiev postponed indefinitely the reception of corpses and the exchange of prisoners scheduled for this Friday, June 6. According to Medinsky, the Russian side complied with the terms of the talks, attended the humanitarian action to deliver to Ukraine more than 6,000 bodies of its servicemen and exchange prisoners. Although the dates had been announced by both sides, Ukrainian negotiators did not attend the exchange venue. Moscow urges Ukraine to comply with the deadlines and agreements. And former Vice President of Ecuador, Jorge Glas, was transferred from the maximum security prison known as La Roca to Quito to submit at a new hearing convened by the National Court of Justice. The National Service of Integral Attention to Persons Deprived of Liberty confirmed the transfer of Glas, who faces charges related to the alleged embezzlement of funds intended for reconstruction after the 2016 earthquake in Manabí, in a case indicated as a setup. For its part, the International Committee for the Freedom of Jorge Glas denounced that there is a persecution against him as part of a new case of judicialization of politics. And in Bolivia, the Supreme Electoral Tribunal announced that only one-third of the candidates nominated by political parties and alliances for the August elections were approved. Our correspondent Fray Morales with the details.
More than 2,000 candidacies for deputy or senator remained open after the disqualification of one-third of the candidates presented by political parties and alliances.
De un total de 3.290 candidatos.
Of a total of 3,290 candidates who were presented by the party's political options, there are 1,180 qualified candidates, equivalent to 35% of the total number of candidates presented by political organizations. The Electoral Tribunal confirmed that it guarantees the holding of elections in accordance with the current electoral calendar. We are moving forward with complete confidence in the election calendar, and we are following it despite all the problems you are aware of. The full chamber is absolutely determined to guarantee the Bolivian people that elections will be held on August 17, even if some people do not want them to be held. The Electoral Tribunal is threatened by the supporters of former President Evo Morales, who are holding demonstrations in the cities and blocking highways in protest because Evo Morales is not allowed to run for president. Because of this, institutions in the interior of the country offered their headquarters so that the Electoral Tribunal could work from a city other than La Paz. We have received other invitations from the mayor of Tarija, from the mayor of Sucre, from the Chuquisaca Departmental Workers Union, and some others. The Supreme Electoral Tribunal is based in La Paz and will continue to meet in La Paz as much as possible, in principle. Meanwhile, presidential candidate Andrónico Rodríguez, president of the Senate, whose leadership was cultivated under the protection of former President Evo Morales, opened the doors to the former president by inviting him to be part of the unity of the left. As a politician, I consider Evo to be the greatest figure in Bolivarian history, without a doubt. Evo is a 24-hour politician. Many of us from the newer generation who were by his side know that Evo teaches politics from practice and not from books or the media. There is no doubt about that, because he has a passion, intuition, and political acumen that he has developed very well since he was very young.
Tiene intuición y tiene tino político bien desarrollado desde muy joven.
Los seguidores de Evo Morales han advertido que
Evo Morales supporters have warned that without the former president as a candidate, there is no point in holding elections, and they are determined to paralyze the country to force President Luis Arce and the Electoral and Constitutional Court to resign. The elections are scheduled to be held on August 17.
Las elecciones deben realizarse el 17 de agosto próximo. Freddy Morales, teleSUR, Bolivia.
In Brazil, experts say in less than a year there's been a 92% increase in deforestation. The National Space Research Institute reported that from August 2024 till May 2025, the increase in deforestation in the Amazon has meant the destruction of anywhere between 500 to 960 square kilometers of forest. They said there are three main reasons for deforestation: mining, massive logging, and wildfires. Brazil's Science, Technology and Innovation Ministry has repeatedly emphasized the importance of preserving the Amazon rainforest, not just for Brazil, but also for the survival of humanity, for its key role in the hydrological and carbon cycles. And in Chile, a 6.6 magnitude earthquake shook the coast north of the Atacama region, leaving 23,000 homes without power. The National Disaster Prevention and Response Service reported that due to the earthquake in the region, there were power outages in homes and minor structural damage in the Atacama areas. It also reported that there were no deaths or injuries and noted that the Navy's Hydrographic and Oceanographic Service ruled out any risk of tsunamis on the country's coast. In addition, the depth of the earthquake was recorded at 65 kilometers, and the localities closest to the epicenter were Diego de Almagro and Copiapo, where the tremor was felt. We now have our second short break coming up. Before we invite you to our Facebook page at teleSUR English, you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. A final break, and we'll be right back. The Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries of the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our Americas, ALBA TCP, agreed Friday in Caracas, Venezuela, to adopt strategies to ensure the region's agri-food sovereignty with a solidarity approach. The bloc's Executive Secretary, Jorge Glas, emphasized that the meeting sought to strengthen the region's agri-food capabilities and vast marine and agricultural resources. The participants at the event also praised the so-called ALBA Azul initiative, which proposes to strengthen the production of marine protein with the intention of benefiting all the bloc members through shared investments.
In this sense, they first agreed to consolidate AgroALBA as a strategic cooperation mechanism for the integration of ALBA TCP aimed at strengthening the agricultural, livestock and agroindustrial cooperation of the members during strategic alliances that facilitate access to productive lands according to the capacities and needs of each nation.
On the other hand, Venezuelan Minister of Fisheries and Aquaculture, Juan Carlos Loyo, highlighted that his country proposes water capacities to boost aquaculture through the ALBA Azul project.
In relation to this aquaculture proposal, as we said yesterday, based on the latest FAO analysis of 2 years ago, the two lines cross. The world produces as much food through aquaculture as fish and other resources are caught. And the world is moving towards the need for an aquaculture to support its food supply. The ALBA Azul strategy also proposes the aquaculture component, and together with the capacity of the land. Venezuela proposes a water capacity, its experiences, its initiatives, so that our anglers can have access to technologies that allow them to develop sea aquaculture activities as well as to use our rivers and water bodies to develop continental aquaculture.
And in China, several regions implement strategies to boost consumption during the summer. Haizu National Wetland Park in southern China hosts sports activities such as canoeing and dragon boat paddling to boost economic growth. In addition, the Hui Autonomous Region of Ningxia is experiencing a high season with desert surfing and stargazing-themed hotel accommodation. At the same time, Jiangsu Province built a special pet park that attracted pet owners and animal lovers, sparking a potential for consumption. In Chile over the weekend, the group Samba y Canuta will perform their third work entitled Survivors. This performance is characterized by a darker and more satirical tone compared to their previous works. Through an original staging that fuses theater, dance, and music, they offer a deep social critique that moves and entertains the audience, celebrating human resilience in a context marked by a civilization crisis, social and political chaos, and the devastation caused by excessive consumption. Throughout the work, they show a collective vision of resistance and survival. And in the city of Nice, France, thousands gathered for a drone show ahead of the UN Ocean Conference from June 9th to the 13th. In the show, more than 2,000 drones lighted up the sky with marine creatures in a 15-minute display that ended with fireworks. The coastal city of Nice will host the third United Nations Ocean Conference, a high-level summit co-chaired by France and Costa Rica. Its mission to confront a deepening ocean emergency that scientists warn is nearing a point of no return. World leaders hope the conference will inspire unprecedented ambition, innovative partnerships, and maybe a healthy competition in the race of protecting the oceans. Like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and more stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. So join us on our social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thanks for watching.